The Last of Us Part 1 released in 2022, which runs on the Naughty Dog game engine, and these are the minimum system requirements of this game. So today in this video, we're going to explore how to maximize performance on this game by applying some hidden and interesting graphical tweaks. So let's get started. First, I've set the screen resolution to 1080p, disabled VSync, and removed the frame rate cap by setting it to unlocked. I've also enabled frame generation and set the scaling mode to AMD FSR3 Super Resolution. Keep in mind that you can't use both render scale and a scaling method at the same time. You'll need to choose one, and in my case I opted for scaling mode, which means render scale is disabled for maximum FPS. I've set the scaling quality to ultra performance. Next, I've turned down the intensity of motion blur, chromatic aberration, film grain, and lens dirt to their lowest settings to boost performance further. For the graphics preset, I've chosen very low. Be sure to follow these settings exactly if you're aiming for the best possible performance. Now let's see how the game runs with these adjustments. Even with these settings, the game remains quite playable, and I'm experiencing smooth, enjoyable FPS. However, if your FPS is still on the lower side, stay tuned. I have many tweaks up my sleeve to help you out, so now let's quit the game and see what we need to do to improve its performance. The next step involves tweaking the game's configuration file. To find this file, navigate to your Users folder, then your Profile, Saved Games folder, The Last of Us Part 1, Users, and finally a folder with a random number. Open the Screen Info file with Notepad. Here's where the magic happens. First, disable depth of field and refraction quality. By setting their values to 0, you can also disable spot shadow and point shadow resolution in the same way. Additionally, turn off sun shadow resolution. Now these settings are critical, and lowering them will result in significant performance improvements. Let's move on to the draw distance, which controls how far objects are rendered in-game. Higher values give a more immersive experience but reduce performance, while lower values boost FPS by limiting how much detail is displayed in the distance. And I recommend setting it to 0.1, but don't go lower than that, or objects may completely disappear. The distance culling scale near setting determines how quickly nearby objects disappear, which can greatly improve FPS when lowered. Similarly, the distance culling threshold near sets the distance at which nearby objects are no longer rendered. Lowering this threshold will further boost performance, and make sure to match my settings. Next, FGLOD controls the detail level of objects and characters close to the player. A higher value will give you more detail, but at the cost of performance, while lowering this improves FPS by simplifying those visuals. Character LOD affects the detail of character models based on their distance from the player. Lowering this will result in low poly models but a performance boost. BGLOD controls the quality of distant objects and environments. Reducing it simplifies background visuals and enhances FPS. And make sure to put the same values like mine. You can also change the screen resolution from here, but I'm happy with mine, so I'll leave it as is. Once you've made these changes, save the file and set its attributes to read only. Now let's test the game with these new settings. The game is even more playable now, and when I'm not recording, the FPS is even higher. You'll notice that characters are low poly, and the draw distance has been significantly reduced, and the trade-off in visual fidelity is worth it for smoother gameplay. But don't go anywhere yet. I still have more tweaks to improve performance. Next, I'll experiment with the render scale. So I've enabled it and set it to 50%, which is the lowest the game allows. However, I know how to apply custom render scale values, and I'll explain that in just a moment. But first, let's see how the game performs with these settings. As expected, the game runs well, but you'll probably notice the visuals look a bit blurry. This is due to temporal anti-aliasing, which is enabled by default, and there's no option to disable it from the game settings. However, I know a method to completely turn it off, which I'll show you shortly. Before that, let's talk about how to apply custom render scale values. Open the configuration file again and adjust the render scale value to your preference. I'm setting mine to 40%, but I wouldn't recommend going lower than this, as it can make the game look too blurry. Once you've made your changes, save the file, and again, set the attributes to read only. Now let's test the game with this new render scale value. As expected, I've gained even more FPS. Though the choice between render scaling and scaling mode like FSR or DLSS is up to you, well, both options provide you best performance. Finally, let's tackle disabling temporal anti-aliasing. TAA reduces jagged edges by blending data from multiple frames, but when combined with a lower render resolution, it can cause excessive blurriness and ghosting, while disabling TAA will give you a sharper image, though with more noticeable jagged edges. To disable TAA, you'll need to modify the game's executable file. Start by downloading HXD Editor, open it and navigate to File, then Open and locate the game directory. Select the first executable file, and once opened, go to Search and Replace. Change the setting to hex values and set the search direction to All. If you're using the Steam version of the game, the process will be different. You'll need to unpack the executable file first. More information on that can be found on our Discord. Since I'm not using the Steam version of the game, I can modify the executable without needing to unpack it. Don't worry, you can find everything you need in the video description. Once you've made the changes, save the file. Now you'll need to modify the other executable as well. It's highly recommended that you create a backup of the files before making any changes. After saving, close everything, and you're good to go. You'll now see that temporal anti-aliasing has been disabled. As I mentioned earlier, it's entirely up to you whether you prefer to play with render scaling or use scaling methods like FSR or DLSS, so it totally depends on you. Well guys, that's it for today's video. If you found this video helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your low-spec friends, so they can also enjoy playing The Last of Us Part 1 on their low to mid-tier systems. And I'll see you all again in the next video. So until then, take care and bye.
Ladies first.
Lady, you must be thinking of someone else.
That's all relative.
This way. Down through here. You think Robert's still got our guns?
For his sake, he better.
Look, once we get our merchandise back, it should be easy to unload. Hold up. Spores.
Where the hell are all these coming from? The place was clear last time.
They're coming out of something. Stay alert.
There's our culprit.
Body's not that old. Better keep your eyes and ears open.
I should be able to fit through here. Oh, shit!
You okay?
Yeah. Damn ceiling's falling apart. Be careful. Easy. Jesus. Watch it, watch it.
Help me.